Hey guys, I'm Aaron, Megan's husband, and if you've been around here on our channel for a while, you know that we work and run HGG together, and when we're not in the kitchen creating recipe content, we love to do DIY projects at home. So today I'm sharing another episode of our DIY design and lifestyle series, and I'm sharing how I built this playhouse for our kids in our backyard. One of the number one questions I get about the DIY projects that I share on this channel is if I have plans or designs with dimensions and everything for the projects I do. And for this one in particular, like some of my other ones, unfortunately, I do not. I kind of make it up as I go along, and that's really what I love about doing these kind of projects. So I just go for it. I love to start with the initial design, but then tweak it as I build to see how it fits the space best, and that's just the excitement of a project. However, like I did with our fireplace project, I'm going to write a blog post and share as many of the dimensions as I can, and then with today's video, I took a lot of video as I was building the project, and I'm gonna kind of share the process that I did to build it, because it's relatively simple as you just kind of start and build out your playhouse. So this is my original concept. It's a small playhouse, 6 feet wide by 4 feet deep, with a 2-foot porch on the front and just a simple slanted roof with an awning. So step one for this project is I needed a base. I originally had planned on a wooden structure like a deck that just sat on the ground, but then I decided that that might invite a lot of critters and spiders and things to live underneath. And when I did this project, wood was very expensive. So it was actually cheaper to pour a 6-foot by 6-foot concrete pad. To save money with this project, as I do with most of mine, I use basic framing lumber to do the work. And so I started with 2x4s along the bottom, and I painted 3 sides of those with a high quality outdoor paint to prevent water absorption. Then I used a concrete drill bit and concrete screws to attach those to the concrete pad. Next, I constructed the corners, and I used 2x3s and 2x2s, which I screwed together, one of each for each corner, and that created a V shape. I did this so that it creates kind of a look of like a post on each corner without using a 4x4, but the V shape allows me to attach plywood on the inside to help with the structure of the house. So after I built the corners, I attached them to the house, and then I used 2x3s along the top for the top plate. And as you can see here, I also put a 2x4 in the center of the back wall. I did this to give structure to the back wall because it's just gonna be a sheet of plywood. And I also did it to help the house from swaying out of shape while I was building it, because at this point, without any plywood, it's kind of wobbly. At this point in the project is also when I made sure the house was as true as possible, meaning the walls were straight and the house was level. As you can see here, I had to insert 2 little metal plates to lift up one corner. I did this for my build because the concrete pad is ever so slightly tilted to one corner. And the reason I had the pad tilted when it was poured was to guarantee that any rainwater or water from the sprinklers would run off into the grass and not back into the house. Next, I used 2x4s to create the door and window frames. The door is 20 inches by 54 inches tall. The front windows are, I think they're 21 inches wide and 22 inches tall. And then the side window is 45 inches wide and 22 inches tall. Now came time to install the plywood for the walls. I used 4x8 sheets of 1/4 inch sheathing. It's relatively inexpensive, and it's really easy to work with because it's not too heavy, but it has enough thickness to it that it felt secure. I carefully measured and cut each piece and screwed them into place. There were lots of gaps because it's an imperfect project, but I just used a lot of caulking to fill in those gaps. So attaching the plywood to the house is really when the house became solid, and the next step was to add these battens. As you can see here, I was testing one. It took a lot of measuring and deciding to figure out what distance I wanted between each batten. I have about 6 3/4 inches, I believe, between each batten, but honestly, the spacing is not truly uniform throughout. I move them around a little on each wall to make it pleasing to the eye, so that each wall, they're evenly spaced. It might not be exactly the same as the wall on the other side, but each wall looks good. The battens are just glued to the plywood, and then each batten has one screw from the inside screwed into it. And in a few places I actually have screws coming from the 2x4 frame of the house into the end of each batten. I did that in certain places to kind of lock everything down into place, but it's only on a few of them. And finally, as I said before, my best friend, lots of caulking all over the playhouse. Make it nice and secure, fill in any gaps, and then when it's painted, you can't see any of the caulking and it looks pretty professional. Next, I started on the roof, and I changed my original design from a flat slanted roof to a peaked roof, and then I wanted to put something kind of fancy inside that peak. So I used scrap cardboard to draw up what I was thinking and determine how many and what length of wood I needed to cut. I used basic 2x2 lumber for this. I cut the 2x2s and screwed everything together, and as you can see, I also decided to have my 2x6 roof beam sit in the sidewalls of the roof, so I made space for that. Once I was happy with the sidewalls inside the peak of the roof, I cut off the excess to give me my triangles, which was my design I was going for, and I attached the beam and installed it on the house. As I said before, caulking and paint are key to minimizing the look of any imperfections in the build. Unfortunately, I don't have any good video of the work I did to complete the roof, but I used the same 1/4-inch plywood, and I built a little cantilever awning over the porch, and I also added supports in the center of the roof from the walls to the beam inside the house. In addition, I added a border around the roof of the whole house out of 1x2s. This adds more support, but it also continues the look of the awning. In my video, you can see that I painted the plywood on the roof black. I did this for two reasons. One, it just helps more weather protection, but mostly it's because there was a month between the time that I finished the playhouse and I received the roofing material that I put on the house. I had to special order it, so I had a long time where I didn't want it just raw plywood up there. I really wanted a black corrugated metal roof on this playhouse, but I couldn't find that for a reasonable price when I just needed a few pieces, so I wound up finding this product. It's corrugated and it's black, but it's actually asphalt. It's a similar material as a traditional roof shingle. It's just shaped into corrugated roofing. It's pretty easy to handle. It's sort of easy to cut, and it was inexpensive compared to corrugated metal. Once I figured out how to cut it, which was the trickiest part, it went up pretty quick, and I'm very happy with the product. The final step for the outside of the playhouse was to make the windows. I used 2x2 lumber again to make the squares, and then I crossed the middle with 1x2s and painted them black. Because of the imperfections in my framing in the house, each window is slightly different size than all the others, so I kind of built them one at a time, measured out what I wanted, built that one, moved on to the next one. They're very similar, but they're slightly different, and I didn't want any big gaps around the windows, so that's why I did it that way. The windows are currently just screwed into place, but they are designed in such a way that I could add hinges or pegs on one side to allow them to open in the future. That's just going to be a question of the kids and how crazy they get opening and closing windows. We don't want too many pinched fingers, so right now they're just screwed into place. And that's it. That's the playhouse is finished. We did build out the inside. We built a sandbox next to it, and we're kind of filling out the landscaping around it on that side of the yard, but I think we're going to save all that for another video. This was just about building the playhouse itself. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it somewhat helpful. Please post any questions below. I'll try my best to answer any questions I can about this playhouse build. Thanks for watching and subscribing to our channel. You can also follow us on Instagram at Healthy Grocery Girl, and I'll see you guys in a future DIY video. Bye. Winner.